Why did you and Andy Card, who was then the White House Chief of Staff, decide you would hold this information back from the president?
Well, again, the decision was that not to provide details as the details were being worked out.
Why wouldn't you tell the President of the United States that CIA contractors, CIA officials were engaged in waterboarding, for example?
Well, because those details had not been finalized in terms of, there was still ongoing discussions between the CIA and the Justice Department. And again, of course, the president could have asked what those details were at any time. And it was my impression, based upon overhearing various conversations over the next few months and the next few years, that in fact he had some knowledge. The level of knowledge, I can't comment on.
But you knew from the very beginning the specific procedures that were underway. The suggestion, I guess, is that you and Andy Card and other White House officials, whether the National Security Advisor Condoleezza Rice or the Vice President Dick Cheney or George Tenet, who was the CIA director, you were trying to protect the president. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, it's always our job to protect the president and to ensure that the president has the information that he needs to have in order to effectively run this country. Again, the president at any time can ask for as much detailed information as possible, and I can't tell you that he didn't have the information. I can't tell you the level of information that he might have, but it was certainly my impression over a period of time, listening in on conversations that he had with others, that he was certainly familiar with the fact that we were engaged in certain techniques such as waterboarding. In fact, part of the concern I have about this report, Wolf, is that it is one-sided in terms of it represents the views of the Democrats on the Senate Intel Committee, which I think is very unfortunate. And I think I have no way of knowing how much of this information is in fact true, because there's a lot of information, quite honestly, that surprised me. And I'm sure there's a lot of information here that surprises President Bush. And I wonder, is this a political document? Democrat senators had information about what was going on. Is this a way to protect themselves? I don't know. But what I worry about is we may have a document here that is potentially flawed and biased.
Well, what shocked you the most after I don't know if you've read all 600 pages or whatever, but what specifically shocked you?
I haven't read. For example, sticking items in the rectums of individuals, that's nowhere close to what the president was aware of or what the president may have sanctioned. Certainly nowhere close to what the lawyers were aware of or what the lawyers sanctioned. At least I certainly wasn't aware of it. So I don't know how much of this report is truly accurate. I do have concerns about the report primarily because of the conclusion that, in fact, these techniques did not lead to any actionable intelligence. Now, I worked with George Tenet. I worked with Porter Goss. I worked with Mike Hayden. They're honorable men. They testified under oath, Wolf, that in fact these techniques did provide actual intelligence, and they were effective.
So I just want to be precise, Attorney General, sorry for interrupting. You did not know, as this report shows, citing CIA documents, by the way, that at least 5 detainees were subjected to what was called rectal rehydration or rectal feeding.
No, but what we don't know is whether or not that's in fact accurate. That's the point that I think is important for your viewers to understand, is I don't know how much of this report is accurate, how much of it is biased, how much of it is political. I think it's very unfortunate that we didn't have Republicans sign on to this report. I think what we need to do is have an unbiased, bipartisan examination of how we fight the war on terror. This document, in my judgment, does not reflect that.